Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel.
Against one of the most popular defenses to the king's pawn opening. Start by moving your pawn to the square e4. I have many different ways to reply on the first move. In this lesson, we'll look at the French defense. This modest move is the French defense. When playing against it, you should occupy the center by moving your pawn to the square d4. Whenever you can occupy the center with this pawn duo on the squares e4 and d4, it is usually an excellent way to begin the game. In 1834, chess players in London played a correspondence game against players in Paris. The Parisians employed this defense with black, and it has been called the French defense ever since. Advance your pawn to the square e5. Pushing this pawn forward is a great way to play against the French defense. This is called the advance variation. My move attacks your pawn center. Move your pawn forward to the square c3 to defend it. The square d4 will come under enormous pressure in this opening. Let's see how both sides fight to control this central square. I developed my knight, attacking the square d4. Develop your knight and defend that square once more. Here's a bit of chess wisdom. When the center is closed, play on the wings. In this position, our pawn chains block the center, so the play will mostly happen on the sides of the board. It's hard to develop my light-squared bishop in the French defense because it is trapped behind the pawns in the center, making it a bad bishop. Move your bishop to the square e2. Next, I will develop my queen to attack the square d4. For now, the square d4 is attacked 3 times and defended 3 times, so you are safe to castle. When playing against the French defense, you can sometimes capture on the square c5 to gain the initiative. I'm going to exchange pawns now to avoid this possibility. Capture back and maintain your pawn chain in the center of the board. Your pawn on the square e5 hinders the natural development of my knight to the square f6. In the advanced variation of the French defense, the black knight often uses the square e7 or even the square h6 to come into the game. Develop your knight. My queen attacks both the squares d4 and b2, preventing you from developing your dark-squared bishop just yet. Meanwhile, if I want to develop my dark-squared bishop, I will have to move my knight first. Your pawn on d4 is now attacked 3 times, but only defended twice. Move your knight to attack my queen. Under threat from your knight, my queen must flee to safety. I will move her to c7, where she patrols the open file. The battle for control of this file is very important in this opening. Move your bishop to the square e3, bringing another defender to the d4 square, and completing your development. I will also develop my dark square bishop. Move your rook to the square c1 to take control of the open c file. Before anything further happens, you better castle. When playing against the French defense, be sure to control the square d4 and fight with the c file. Next, let's take a deeper look at some plans in this opening. Here, you have a central pawn duo on the squares e4 and d4 set up against my French defense. My strategy in the center is to control the light squares. How should you play against my French defense? This move would lose. My strategy in the center is to control the light squares. How should you play against my French defense? Your move grabs a space advantage in the center, preventing my knight from coming to the square f6 and trapping my bishop on the square c8 behind the pawn chain. My move attacks your center. Find a move that defends your pawn on the square d4 a second time. Very good, Kai. With your center secure, you can safely develop your pieces. Next, let me show you a trap that sometimes works against the French defense. This move is common in the French defense because it attacks the squares d4 and b2 at once. Ignore the threat and develop your bishop to the square d3. Count the attackers and defenders of the square d4. I Let's see what happens if I try to win that pawn. Capture back with your pawn. Count the attackers and defenders again. I have 2 while you have only 1. That pawn is mine. Capture my knight with yours. Say goodbye to your knight. I have won the pawn, but here comes the trap. Move your bishop to the square b5, checking my king and revealing a threat on my queen. With my king in check, I have no time to save my queen. Before capturing my queen, take my bishop and check my king again. Will I capture back with my king? I will lose the right to castle. Capture my undefended queen with yours. French defense players may fall for this trap, unaware that taking your central pawn seals their queen's fate. Let's look at another plan against the French defense next. Compare your bishops with mine. While yours have open diagonals, my bishop on d7 is trapped behind its own pawns and unable to enter the game. This is called a bad bishop. My bad bishop on the square d7 is a burden that every French defense player must bear, but it prevents you from playing the trap that we just learned. How can you attack my queen and resolve the tension in the center? Sometimes, instead of defending a pawn, you can move it or capture something with it. Try moving your pawn on d4 to c5. By releasing the tension in the center, you no longer have to be concerned about losing the center pawn. I captured back with my bishop, forming a queen and bishop battery against your king. What should you do? Look for a special move that will tuck your king away safely and bring another defense. I captured back with my bishop, forming a queen and bishop battery against your king. What should you do? If only there were a special move that would move your king to safety and defend the square f2 a second time. I captured back with my bishop, forming a queen and bishop battery against your king. What should you do? Towards the center. I moved it to the square e7, blocking my dark squared bishop from developing. Continue with your plan and advance your pawn to the square b4. I cannot allow you to capture my pawn on the square c5, so this time I must release the tension. Do you see the best way to capture back? Pushing your a pawn and b pawn gain space on the queen side. With my bishop unable to move, I will instead develop my rook to the only open file. While you have a solid space advantage, I was first to control the c-file. Let's look at another trap next. In this game, you played the king's pawn opening, I played the French defense, and you responded with the advance variation. Now play a move that prepares pawn to the square b4 on the next turn. queen with your knight, your control over the c-file increases. And now what should you play? Very good. Your knight attacked my queen and then jumped to a fantastic... Moving your knight to the square c5 looks like a good move here. What is another piece you should bring to the c-file? A move of strength. Your rook on the open c-file pins my knight to my queen, compelling me to prevent your b-pawn from advancing further. Now what should you play? There are many good moves for you here, but look for a little maneuver that improves your knight. Now what should you play? Look for a little maneuver that brings your knight from the edge of the board to a fantastic square. Try moving your knight on a4 to c5. Well played. My knight on the square f5 is my most active piece. Do you see how to dislodge it from its perch? Attacking my knight with your queen will not work. It is defended by a pawn after all. Look for a move that attacks my knight with a pawn. My knight on the square f5 is my most active piece. Do you see how to dislodge it from its perch? My knight is forced to flee the center. And it goes on. This g-pawn push is a thematic idea in the French advance to attack a knight on the square f5. Your g-pawn controls the square f5 and may later attack my king side. Next, let's look at a similar example on the other side of the board. Here is a familiar scenario in the French advance. Your pawns give you a space advantage, but my pieces are more active. Activating my rook along the open c-file seems like a good move. Do you see how to disrupt my position by dislodging my knight from the square c6? That move does not dislodge my knight from the square. Activating my rook along the open c-file seems like a good move. Do you see how to disrupt my position by dislodging my knight from the square c6? Bingo! If I want to avoid losing material, my knight must flee. Your pawn on the square b5 is now attacked twice, but only defended once. How can you defend it a second time? That move fails to adequately defend your b-pawn from capture. Consider using a pawn. Your pawn on the square b5 is now attacked twice, but only defended once. How can you defend it a second time? Well played. By dislodging my knight, you gained more space on the queen side and further restricted my pieces. Let's look at the next example. In this example, I'll show you how to play against the French defense if the position becomes close. As before, move your pawn forward to the square a3. My next move will close the position up tightly like a zipped zipper. My plan is to clamp down on the square b3. Develop your knight to the square d2 to anticipate this. My light square strategy is quite dangerous. If I can get a stranglehold on all of the light squares on the queen side of the board, then you will struggle to open the position. Let me show you a clever move that responds to my plan. Move your rook over to the square b1. If I continue with my plan and play my knight to the square b3, then you can capture my knight with yours. Suppose I capture back with my queen. Should you exchange queens by capturing mine with yours? Exchanging queens is advantageous for you because when I recapture, my pawn chain will be broken. Do you see how to attack and win my undefended pawn on the square b3? Nice move. Next you will capture my pawn on the square b3 and emerge from the opening with a win. Let's take it from the beginning and test your memory. What was your first move in this lesson? I will play the solid French defense by moving my king's pawn forward one square to the square e6. What should you play now? Very good. When you are able to occupy the center squares on the first two moves with this pawn duo, it is usually an excellent way to begin the game. My move continues with my light square strategy in the center and directly challenges your pawn duo. How should you continue? Playing the advanced variation, I see. How should you continue now? This move does defend the square d4, but it is better to... How should you continue now? Nice move. The French advance is defined by the clash of our two pawn chains in the center of the board. Okay, time to develop a piece. My knight move attacks your central pawn on the square d4. How should you respond? Yes, sir, that's it. Your knight occupies its natural square and defends the pawn on the square d4 too. Do you remember the move that we reviewed in this position? Which piece hasn't moved yet that needs to be developed? Developing this bishop is the right idea. Your turn. Developing this bishop is the right idea. Your turn. I think I will play my rook to the c-file, just in case it opens up later in the game. How can you complete your development? Excellent move. Now your development is complete. Remember these thematic plans and you'll have success in the king's pawn opening against the French defense. Kudos on completing this lesson.